I'm just wondering, what would you say or transmit to the young man of today, the young men that probably will watch or are watching this video? What would you transmit them? What would you tell them? What would you, in a way, what advice you would give them, or something like that?
Well, actually, I'd have a word for older men first.
Mm.
I don't think the younger men, for example, will be watching this type of video because they simply don't know of this space or haven't heard of it or just conceptually haven't gone there. But older men might not know of it, but if you've lived years, if you have years under your belt, you will know about suffering and pain.
Mm.
You know? You will know about life is hard. You cannot reach middle life without knowing life is hard. Those truths that Rohr talks about, you'll know them, whether you've read them or heard them like this. So I would say to older men, it's very possible to do this work now, no matter what age. And in some ways, it might be a little bit easier when you're older, actually, because you already will know some of these great truths. Mm-hmm. And the process could be more of one of consolidation and affirmation of your life.
Yeah.
So if older men are interested in this area of work, rites of passages, I recommend it as a process. The only one I know is Richard Rohr, really. I mean, there are many other groups offering that. I have no idea what they're like, but the one from Richard Rohr's organization was well organized, and I thought it was good. So, and to older men, I would say, or younger men, whether it's your own son or not, irrespective, need the older men to get up and get on board quickly, because our younger men are dying in all sorts of ways, as well as literally dying. We need the older men to become elders, in that sense of the word, ASAP. The time is past. Time is well past for them to do this work. For younger men, I think it's a time of good hope, because there are men across the world now doing stuff. It's usually below the radar. They won't find it on their mainstream media reported. They won't find it in their social media. They'll have to do a bit of digging, but it is happening. There are men doing stuff across the world that's really positive for manhood. And I'll tell you of a couple of books in a second that might be good to read. But there's much written on this. It's not that new area. There's good stuff out there. And you may have to work a little bit harder and travel a bit to find these spaces, but so be it. Men have traditionally responded well to challenge. So we don't need you to go to the South Pole now. We need young men and older men to go deep inside themselves. The new South Pole, the new Everest, and as big a challenge as getting to those physical places. So I would be off hope future, knowing the men I do know now involved in this work. And I know them across Europe, in different countries, across the States, Australia, in Africa. The work has begun. If I'll just finish, actually, I'll recommend just 3 books that people are interested in reading, because there's tons of it. Of Rohr himself, there's many. He writes a lot. This is a small book, Falling Upward, and it's a spirituality for the 2 halves of life. It's not particularly for men or about men, it's in general, but it's very readable, and you'll get introduced to Richard Rohr's writing, and it's pretty accessible. Yeah. And he will talk about the idea of the second half of life. This is Wild at Heart is a classic in the field, written by John Eldridge. And its subheading is Discovering the Secret of a Man's Soul. So I'd recommend this. It's American. I liked it. And it's probably 25, 30 years old now, I guess. But it stands the test of time. There are some things in it that I disagree with, of course, but it's well worth an introduction to this area. And just from an Irish point of view, this is the guy, Jonathan, who the writer of Anam Cara. So Anam Cara itself might be a little bit of a difficult read, as in there are harder concepts in it to get your head around. So I'm just thinking of people whose English isn't their first language. This is a book of blessings and poetry, but there are pieces of prose in it as well. And he writes well, actually, about transformation and rites-of-passage type movements and liminal space.
Mm.
It's a joy, this book. There's many more, but those three are good. And if people wanted to know more, they can get in touch with you, to me. You know, in the research I did, obviously I had to research a lot of stuff.
Mm. Mm-hmm.